Well, thank y'all for coming this evening. I really do appreciate, you guys taking the time out of your schedule as we're kind of leading up into the fall overall. And so this book is just an amazing process for me. And I've done earlier, right before, a couple days before I released the book on October 1st, I had done like a release specific to this Women Christians organization that I belong to. But the book is not only there's my faith in God actually is compelled within or is told the story within overall the book. However, it's not just that piece of it. There's a caregiving piece of it. There's a business professional piece of it. So there's multi-layered pieces within the book also. So I'm going to talk about those various layers within this conversation that we're having. Let me go back to, I'm looking at the view, but I think my view is a little, there you go. It's a little skewed right now. So everybody good? Can you see my screen? Can you see your screens? Everybody's okay. Okay, very good. So what I might do is I might do a little bit of a reading if it's okay with you all, and then I'll open it up to some questions. And if you don't have any questions to start out, I can kind of start with a little bit of some of the questions that I have. And so the way that I wrote Armored, it's a memoir, but it also has practical and inspirational advice specific to being a care coach. I don't call myself a caregiver by any means. That term just never really resonated with me. And so are the relationship that I have specifically with my husband. He's had three major health battles. The first was even before we were married. This is in 2002. And then where he had a reaction to a really bad asthma medicine. He had a really bad reaction to an asthma medicine. And so I put him in ICU for 5 days. And there was this experimental system that they had to work on him with. And fortunately, he was able, he reacted really strongly or positively to it. So he was very successful with that. And then when he was 38 years old, so this is 10 years ago, almost 11 years ago, he was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And then he went through intense therapy, chemotherapy, with surgery, then chemotherapy, then radiation overall to really overcome that. And then all of the process to deal with that. And with each battle, we learned lessons. And then I actually became stronger in my faith walk, and then even in my medical walk, because I have no medical background whatsoever. I call myself the unintentional caregiver. If ever there was someone that you did not want to care for you, it would be me. And
That's not true.
primarily because it's true, Ellery, because before I had no medical background, I would get weak over looking at needles or him vomiting or anything like that. And so it's a slow kind of build overall that each battle that he went through really armed me with. And then when he had the stroke in November of last year, was November 26th, it was, you know, you fall to your knees, but you've learned all of these things all these coping mechanisms all along the way to really help yourself really kind of come to that point. And so as he was going through this process, and he was 100% paralyzed on his right side, including he couldn't even open his right eye when he was coming out of the stroke. He had 100% blockage in his carotid arteries. And so they had to put 2 stents in. And it was all of that process. He spent 24 days in the hospital, 2 ICU stents and inpatient rehab, and then we were spit out the other side a couple days before Christmas. But knowing him and knowing, his strength and knowing what he, really gravitates to in terms of being self-motivated, I really was there to encourage him not to, he doesn't respond well to mothering. And so I just knew that I needed to remind him of who he was overall to get to the other side. But the other thing that really resonated with me, and I heard very strongly, is that he is here for a reason. He survived this. He survived all of these things for a reason. And it's to be a testimony to serve, to be inspirational and motivational to other people. And so I kept telling him, and when he was in inpatient rehab, we're going to write a book, and it's going to be called, In Sickness and in Health. And, it'll be the caregiver's perspective and the patient's perspective and that sort of thing. And as he was coming out of it, I just kept hearing strongly that I needed to write this book. His story is still being told, and really can't get to that place yet to really articulate his book. And so, I was spit out the other side. And so January hits, and I'm just trying to understand kind of which way's up. And then my business starts to pick back up again slowly. And so by March, I was going to have like this really awesome month. And then COVID hit. So needle across the record, right? And so I said, okay, it's the time for me to write the book. And so I've wanted to write a book for 20 years. This is not the book that I thought that I was going to write 20 years ago, but this book just poured out of me. 30,000 words just poured out of me in 3 weeks, and then began the process of, that's the advantage of, or the COVID gift that I call it, the advantage of just the world stopping, is that we were able to heal, and I had the space to be able to really think, to create this sort of thing. And I don't use that term lightly, the COVID gift, because people have lost their lives and their livelihoods. But for me, it gave me the time and space that I needed, because I didn't even realize how much I needed to heal. So writing the book was very cathartic in that kind of way as well. And so since I went through this whole self-publishing process and whatnot, like I said, I released it on October 1st, and it's gotten great reception. But more than anything is that I've gotten in the hands of people who are going through their own battles right now. And one in particular, her husband had a stroke in June. And so I was able to share, Armored with her, and for it to encourage her overall. And that's the whole reason why Armored is to be able to give, other people that hope and inspiration. Margaret Sherrill's joining us right now. So I'm going to, so it's written as a memoir, because you need to understand kind of the context of who we are as people and really the battles overall. But every chapter has at the end of it a lesson learned that I had specific to that subject that I'm talking about in that chapter. And then I ask a care coach question. So I ask, if you are preparing for your own battles, what have you done? And some of those questions are as simple as, do you have a will? And have you executed a power of attorney, especially a medical power of attorney? Do you know your significant other's usernames and passwords? All of those things, because we had no plan on this happening. We were 48 years old when this happened. And 2 weeks before his stroke, I had attended this luncheon. There was no reason for me to go to this luncheon other than I was supporting a friend who was supporting a friend. And there was a financial planner, and this financial planner said, do you have the usernames and passwords of all of your loved ones, especially the ones close to you? And I thought, I have my book. Darren knows where my book is, that it has it all. I don't think I know where all of his were. And it was a fleeting thought, in one ear and out the other, right? It's the holidays. It's almost Thanksgiving. We're throwing a big Christmas party that Saturday night. And that Tuesday before Thanksgiving, the world stopped for me. And I could not get into his phone. I could not get in. And it actually had all of his password. It had a password keeper, everything else. I had to learn how to remap all of that. I spent 3 weeks remapping, so then that way I could get into it. So that's one of the types of lessons learned that I put in the book, is that, do you have this? Do you have a central repository? If you have someone that you love that has a lot of medical issues, do you know all of their surgeries, all of their medications, all of their, the different nuances? And by the way, you can go to my website and download, I call it the anatomy graphic. You can download it for free just because if you need kind of a starting point, it's in a PDF for you to be able to kind of have, so you know, and you have access to also. But at the end of each chapter, I ask the question. So in chapter 6, it's reminding the patient who they are. And so it's when the reality ultimately sets in. And one thing that I did, because early on post-stroke, there was a span of about 36 hours when Darren couldn't move his right side and he shed tears during most of his waking hours. At one point I got in bed with him so that I could look him eyeball to eyeball. I asked him if he was sad and he nodded yes. I asked him if he was feeling sorry for himself and he again nodded yes. I told him that of everyone I know, he had every right to feel sorry for himself. His present situation sucked and it would be a long road to get back, but I told him that I knew if anyone could do it, he could. I also reassured him that I was not going anywhere and that he couldn't get rid of me that easily. From years before, when he was about halfway through his cancer radiation treatment, I distinctly remember a passing comment that Darren's oncologist nurse made to us during one of his appointments. The nurse walked in to take Darren's vitals and get his weekly update. When he saw me, he joked, "Oh, you're still here?" I replied, "Of course I'm here. Where else would I be?" The nurse then commented, "Well, at this juncture in the treatment program, some patients see their spouses or significant others disappear. Those overwhelmed family members say, 'I didn't sign up for this.'" I was dumbfounded with that notion. It seems so foreign to me. Although I know that if you aren't armored for these tough life challenges, they will test the strongest of people and shake the. And so the care coach question that I have specifically for that chapter is, does your patient know that you're in it with them for the long haul? Have you vocalized it? Don't assume they need to hear you say it and say it often. So that's just one of the examples that I have in the book as I've written it, because I really feel it's incumbent upon me to share the things that I've picked up, not only from, most recently the stroke battle, but also from the cancer battle that he went through. So I'm going to leave it there for just a minute and just kind of open it up and see if anyone has any particular questions. Some of you have the book and have read the book, and I'm not sure if some of the others of you have done so. Ellery? Oh, you're on mute, Ellery.
Good thing I raised my hand then. I have a question if I can go first.
Yes.
Okay. It's a sort of a long lead up, forgive me. So you're someone who likes to collect information and resources, and throughout the book you detail how you collected all of Darren's medical information and all the relevant facts and procedures so that you could make informed decisions. And being someone that likes to collect information and resources, and also given that this spring and summer was heavily saturated with news coverage of COVID and the elections and everything going on, how do you balance the consumption and the creation? So how do you strike a balance between consuming what you need to learn and what you need to know, and what you need for your life and for Darren's care, and then also have the space and time to create this book and create other things that you've created throughout the year?
That's a fantastic question. I wish I would have come up with that.
You didn't have to.
Yes, it's a great question, because I actually feel like in some ways I am not informed, because I realized very early on that I was taking in too much news and I was having some panic attacks. So it was probably within the first 2 weeks of COVID, so early on, even before I started writing the book. And so I needed to have something that was a distraction for me. And the book was a really good distraction. And so I get what I need to know from a COVID, perspective in terms of understanding and where we are as a country and whatnot. Informed friends that I have, but also my sisters and Garner. And so I get a lot of that information from her. And so what I need, weird. There's a weird. It's like someone's. Y'all hear that noise?
If you can mute Cheryl G, then I think it would fix it, because it keeps popping up on her name.
Okay. let's see. All right. That's better. Okay. Thank you, Keisha.
My pleasure.
Hmm. So it sounded like there was someone that was like constructing something. It's great. So Ellery, it's that balance overall to be able to know, okay, I have just enough information to protect my, my husband, but then not too much information, so I'm absorbing a lot of negative because I, it's not good. It wasn't healthy, and it was also cluttering my ability to be able to be creative. And so for me, having space and being quiet is it's incumbent upon me to have that, to be able to be creative. Did that answer your question? Mhm. Yeah.
So Don, I have a question for you.
Yes, Ed.
So, with all that you had to do and taking care of your husband and all the other things, how did you take care of you? It's probably along similar to this last question, but what did you do to take care of you? It's one thing to take care of someone for a short period of time, but with an extended period of time, it could be a drain. So what did you do to take care of yourself?
Yeah, that's one of those lessons that I learned from his cancer battle, because I didn't know how to leave any piece of it for myself. I threw everything into caring for him in the cancer battle. And when we were spit out the other side of it, he was healthy, because let's face it, when you have a sick relative, everybody rushes to the patient, and then the kid's like, hello, I'm here, I'm over here. And so that I learned that I needed to, when there was help offered, to take that help wherever I could. And I'm a get or done kind of person. So being able to allow people to do stuff for me, or even asking people to do stuff for me, does not come natural to me. And so that was part of the self-preservation piece of it. But it's also when he went through his cancer battle, I actually felt, and he was okay. We were on the other side, like we were trying to resume life. In all honesty, I went through about a year of a depression because I lost my identity. And I'm going to say something that's like totally not PC to say, but like I was the woman whose husband had cancer. And so everywhere I went, every event I went, how's your husband? What's going on? I didn't have another identity beyond that piece of it, right? So I was specifically intentional as much as I could be. In the very first part of it, it was hard, because but I did allow others to help me in the beginning of the stroke battle. And then especially in January, when after the holidays, we were back home, everything, I made sure. So my Bible study, those folks are like really strong in my life. And that's the part that I was very intentional about carving out, that I just needed to make sure that I attended that meeting every week, because it fed my soul. And then also wherever I could, being with friends. Now, COVID times, it's hard. I'm lonely. I miss people, but I've kind of even set up a way to do it safely, in that I do front porch visits, and so I have some of that kind of ability at this time to be able to have, those go-to people that I feel safe with, that I can do that with overall. But it's very intentional, Ed. You have to make sure that it's intentional, because you will lose yourself in it if it's not. And then here's the other last piece of it. I'm sorry, this is a long answer. It's giving yourself grace. And so, because we are often not kind to ourselves in our own head. And I call her the drill sergeant, and she sits on my shoulder, and she's constantly telling me, well, why can't you do that? Well, what's wrong with you? You should be able to do this, and you should be able to do that. And, why did it take you that long to accomplish this? Before the stroke, you could have done that in 5 minutes. Now it's taking you 4 hours. What is wrong with you? And it was it wasn't until one of my girlfriends actually pointed it out. She's like, you almost have PTSD. And she said, you know, or what are you doing for you? And at that moment, I realized I needed to have some self-awareness about how I was talking to myself in my head, because I wasn't talking. I mean, I think it's Joyce Myers that says a lot of times we're talking to ourselves worse than we would a friend. And if we talk to a friend the way that we talk to ourselves, we would no longer be a friend of that person, right? Or that person would no longer be our friend or love us anymore. So if we don't take care of ourselves in the way that we are putting that information in our head and give ourselves that grace, then we won't be able to survive it for sure.
That's good. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Lindy, did you have a question? Where'd you go? Oh, there you are.
I raised my hand electronically.
Yes.
First of all, I want to say that we've always had advanced directive for each other, my husband and I, and some people know it as 5 wishes, advanced directive. But the problem exists in our house where you bring up in the book about passwords and taking care of things on the computer. And the advanced directive is healthcare proxy. Legally, you have the legal part set up, but then like what you say, that other thing kind of just gets swept to the side because the person in charge is just so efficient and does it all the time and doesn't think about the other person needing those access points. So after I read your book, I said to my husband, pick up the chair, bring it over here. I'm going to show you something. And he immediately went like this. But I said, this book really brought it home that if something happens to me, you can find all the passwords in this. Actually, we keep it in a kid's, like a writing manual, you know, and it's on our desk. But I said, you wouldn't even know how to get started with this. And so I showed him how to do the electronic banking. I showed him how to get into our utilities. And it's been a difficult challenge, but I said, don't get frustrated, because imagine the frustration. And I called your story to mine. I said, it'll be brutal to have no idea how to approach this. So thank you.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Lindy. Yeah. And especially doing it when you're stressed out, right? And so that would have tested me on any day in terms of my patience. But then layering on just the level of stress that you have when you're trying to care for someone, in addition to that, it adds a whole other element to it. So yeah, thank you for sharing that piece of it. I'm glad it helped. You're going to pull them along, kicking and screaming, right? No, that's fantastic. Does anyone else have any questions? You know, it's gotten great. It's gotten really great results. I had no expectations for the book when I kind of put it out there, and I've sold 500 copies at this point. And so now it's just kind of taking it, I know, and it's taking it, really, I'm trying to help continue to promote it. You know, COVID times, it's a little bit more challenging because you can't have actual book signings or book readings or anything else like this. Like Ed released a book last year and he had like a huge party and everything else. So there's no doing that. So last week I had a driveway book signing. And so I had folks come by and I signed their books when they were in their cars. And so that was a lot of fun. And then this is another way to really kind of keep the inertia going, because I really believe that it belongs in people's hands to really help them, whether they're in the battle right now or truly trying to prepare themselves for the battle. And Lindy, you kind of hinted on something in terms of, you know, being able to prepare. one of the things that you have to prepare yourself for is making life and death decisions on behalf of someone else and reconciling that in your head that you have to be okay with it. And so when he had the stroke, well, let me just back up a minute. So it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon, like I did normally and on day-to-day basis. We were out and about, we both work from home, but we just are out and about in our clients' offices and whatnot. So I called him. I was on my way to a 4:30 meeting. I called him. I was finishing a coffee appointment. He was completely himself. There was no sign of the impending stroke whatsoever. And 40 minutes later, he went into full-blown stroke mode. And luckily, my uncle that lives with us recognized it, got the paramedics in our house within 15 minutes. By the way, if you do not know, there is a drug called TPA. If they get it in their system within the first 2 hours of the stroke, it has the opportunity to stop the stroke in its tracks and to start reversing the sign. So it's really important to know the warning signs for stroke specifically. So then that way you can get them to the hospital. So it's a blessing of all blessings that my uncle saw it. Darren was slurring. He couldn't get words out. And then he started slumping over and my uncle helped him to the floor. He was just like, "What's my name? What's your name?" And he couldn't respond. And so calls me up. It's like right at 4:30. And he said, "I'm just putting Darren in an ambulance right now. And they're going to take him," and he named the hospital. And I was like, this is how naive I was. I said, "Is it really that bad that we have to pay for an ambulance?" Yeah, that's how naive I was in all of this. So I get to the emergency room. I don't know how I made it to the hospital before the ambulance did, but I did. And so I get there, and then finally he gets there, and they pull me back, and the neurologist wasn't there at the time. There was a neurologist on staff at a nearby system hospital. So we were doing everything with telemedicine. And she said, he's going through the CAT scan right now. He's having a full-blown stroke. He's 100% paralyzed on his right side. And she's going through all this medical terminology. And she said, "I need your permission, because it's within the 2-hour window, to put this drug in his system." And I had the wherewithal to say, "What are the side effects?" And she said, "Well, there's a 3% chance that he can throw a blood clot and he can die right immediately once we start this." And I said, "So there's a 97% chance that my husband will be able, if you put this drug in his system, that he'll be okay, or better than he would if he didn't have the drug." And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Go, do it now." And so being able to think that quickly on your feet and make a life and death decision is really important. And so you have to be in the headspace to know that you can do this, because it's really important. The other decision that I had to make, and this one was really tough too, is he has guns. He likes to shoot, he doesn't like to hunt, but he likes to game shoot, like to for hobby. Like he likes to just go and shoot skeet and stuff like that, or he used to. And so he has a gun vault, and so my sister, the RN, who is very close to me, who I gave permission to have these kinds of conversations with me, we found out that this is like the Tuesday, we found out that he was going to be released from the inpatient rehab that Friday. So she calls me up and she says, "I think you need to change the password on the gun vault." And I said, "What?" And she said, "Well, there's a chance that he could be very depressed, and you don't want to come home and he will have committed suicide." And this is how again, super naive. My brain hadn't even gone to that. And so then you start to process, how do you deal with this and preserve the integrity of your marriage and your relationship? Because at the heart of it, it's this because it's a foundational relationship. We've been friends for almost 24 years. We've been together for 21, married for 16. And so how do you make these decisions where I don't want to be the one that's taking away the civil liberties of my spouse, right? And so I prayed on it. I talked to Darren's uncle brother. This is his uncle. They grew up like brothers. They're a year and a half apart. I talked to
Sorry,
Darren.
Dawn.
Oh, you have to go.
Sorry, Dawn. I'm hopping off. Yeah, it was so interesting. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for joining.
Sorry for interrupting. Bye-bye.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks. So I talked to his doctor, and then I figured out that I was going to have to address this straight on with Darren. And so I figured I found the best time to do it. And then I just had a straight up conversation with him. I said, I could do this. I could make these changes to the gun vault and you wouldn't have any idea. But that's not in fairness to you or to our marriage and to our relationship. And he couldn't talk at the time. But the look of disgust on his face was like, I would never do that. And he started like slowly trying to name all the people, like the reason why he's living. And I got like really close up to him, like really close. And I'm like, you better not do that, And so I know that depression is a major side effect of the stroke, and he is on medication because of that. And I'm constantly monitoring kind of where he is from a mental health standpoint. But I didn't want to be the one that would be responsible for taking away his civil liberties, and I just didn't feel like that was something that I wanted to do. So making those kinds of decisions for another human being and I don't have any children, that's major to me, and so are you prepared to make those kinds of decisions also? Does someone have their hand raised? Keisha, did you have
It
it?
was me. I had raised my hand. I wanted to ask, I think I saw a billboard about strokes and it said the acronym was like FAST, like facial, like are you familiar? Can you, and that was one question. And the other question I have before I forget is, I'm not on Twitter, or IG, or Instagram, but I am on Facebook. So is there like a fan page or something so I can spread the word about like, go visit Dawn and go get her book? Like, how can I help promote it?
Yes, there is an it's Armored by Dawn Landry or Dawn F. Landry. That's a Facebook and that's on Facebook also. So yeah, thank you for helping spread
Of course.
the word.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if any of you guys are on Goodreads also, it's on Goodreads as well. That's a whole underground world that I didn't even know. But if y'all are familiar with Goodreads, are you familiar with that, Keisha?
No, I'm not.
Yeah, it's a whole population of readers, and they have like contests in terms of the number of the books they read, and
Oh, wow.
review.
Awesome.
They do kind of reviews, and I think it's an offshoot of Kindle.
Oh, okay.
Into Kindle as well. So yeah, there's some element of that also.
Oh, thank you. Were you familiar with the acronym though? Was it like FAST, like facial?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. I don't know what it all.
I think from my basic life support, if I can remember, it's like facial, actions, S is for speech and T is for time, maybe.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
You need to do things very quickly.
Mhm.
You need to recognize the symptoms and then in a timely manner call paramedics, which happened in your case.
Thank you.
Ellery, did you have something? Did you know?
A is for arm. If you can't raise your arm above your head without it drifting back down. I just brushed up for whatever reason. I don't know. Overconsumption over here.
Great to be prepared. Yeah. Margaret, did you have a question?
Actually, I had some comments and I wanted for you to maybe expound. I've never met anyone more faithful, who have more strength in faith and just with each other, as well as perseverance and tenacity as you and Darren. And one thing that I learned through this process is about patient advocacy. And I was wondering if you might talk a little bit about that because people may not know that it's available to them.
Thank you. more than anything, so Margaret was there with us. Margaret's been a friend for a long time. And so one of our first friends here in Houston, and so she was there with us during the cancer battle. And you're right. It there are times when life just brings you to your knees, right? And so some people lose their faith. For me, my faith got stronger because of it, because I didn't have anything else to lean on. Quite honestly, I leaned on God and strengthened in my relationship because I couldn't focus on anything else, quite honestly. And so there were, in the beginning when he was diagnosed with cancer, because we were so young. I mean, I think 38 is young, right? To have stage 4 cancer. Managing it all, being so responsible for another human being. And like I said, I don't have a maternal instinct in my body. I'm, you know, I have dogs, I don't have kids. And so, but that responsibility that you have overall, I just took it so seriously. And so that's when it almost innate, it kicked in. So that very first day, maybe even back up beyond that, he had swollen lymph nodes in his neck, and the doctor, and he had strep throat. The doctor thought, so he went to an ENT. The doctor thought he had cat scratch fever. Who has that? I thought that was just a song. And so, so they did a fine needle aspiration, and he was set to go back for the results that following week. And like in my gut, I knew that I needed to be with him at that appointment. And he said, no, you don't need to come with me to this. He's like, I think it's going down even. So that morning I went to my client meeting at 7:30, and his appointment was like at 9 or so. My appointment ended at about 8:30, and I was only maybe 15 minutes away. So my boss was there. And so I told him, I said, I really think that I need to go to this appointment with Darren. I don't know why. Something is telling me I need to be there. And so sure enough, I get there. They had just pulled him back. The nurse brings me back with him. The ENT has zero bedside manner. And so he walks in and he said, hey, how you doing? And Darren's like, I'm good. He said, I figure it's going down this week. And the doctor says, well, I'm not going to beat around the bush. He's like, it's stage 4 cancer. It's called squamous cell carcinoma. He's like, I'm going to send you across the street. We're going to do a CAT scan, but I'm going to go over there and I'm going to grab the scope, and we're going to do a scope. And literally spun on his heel and walked out the door. And my husband has a really funny sense of humor. And so Darren later, because we always kind of compare these things, he's like, I couldn't look at you. He said, because I swear you took he's like, you took the biggest inhale that I have ever seen in my life. And I don't think that they had any more oxygen in the room. And he said, and then my butt grew feet. And he said, I slid down the chair. And so instinctively, I grabbed whatever piece of paper that I could find, and I don't know what it was in that room, and an ink pen. So when the doctor came back in, I got him to spell it out for me. And then that began the making sure that I had an accordion folder. I had a tablet that was in there because he only saw the doctor once a week. He went for radiation a couple times a week. And when he was going through chemo, he was going once a week. But we only saw the doctor once a week. And so I would compile all of his symptoms from that week. So then that way I would remember them. So when I had that one chance with the doctor, I made sure that we were as efficient and as effective as we possibly could be to make sure that we were addressing those signs and those symptoms as much as possible. And then we would compare notes in the lobby area to hear what kind of medicines the other patients were on, just to make sure that if there was something like in the radiation part, because it was all in this area, it was just raw at that point. And so there was something called it was kind of like, you know how Pepto-Bismol kind of soothes, it coats the stomach. It was something like that, but for the throat. And his doctor just forgot to tell him that it could be, a possibility. So I asked the doctor, and he's like, oh yeah, I can write you that. And then just wrote a script for it, So Darren, especially towards the end of his chemo and radiation, could not advocate for himself. He just couldn't think. But even when you are in your right state of mind and you're not exhausted and you don't have all of these chemicals in your system, you still need somebody else to listen for you and be that advocate for you on your behalf to make sure that you're not forgetting something or that you hear exactly like the doctor interpreted it. So then that way you can take notes effectively. During the stroke, he couldn't talk for himself. I spoke for him I would say the first 5-6 months. Now, when he's on a doctor's appointment, I'm there because we're doing telemedicine doctor's appointments. I'm there in the background just in case he gets stuck on and he can't get to a word. I help him, but he's really come a really long way. But having that advocate is extremely important because you have to sometimes be their champion and question some things. They're the doctors. At the end of the day, you can do way too much research and get yourself in trouble. I learned that in the very first battle that he had in 2002. But you want to make sure that there's somebody there just in case that's there. And the hardest problem is really seeing people that don't have someone to be their advocate when they're in ICU. Or my heart goes out to all these people that are by themselves because of COVID right now. That's the thing that I've stood on. Margaret, to your point, in terms of just staying grateful, I look for the little tiny nuggets of things that I can stay grateful for. And that was one of them, was the fact that Darren went through his stroke battle last November and not during COVID times, because not being able to be with him during that time would have been so difficult for either of us.
Well, and I think that your positivity just shows in the fact that when you were talking about the doctor saying the side effects, there's 3% chance he could die, you turned it around. It's like a 97% chance, woo, we're gonna be fine. And that's just what I love about you. You're just so positive about everything, even in the darkest moments. And something else that I think that we saw too is people like me who don't have family nearby and live alone. There is the possibility to actually get a patient advocate at a hospital to fight for me if I can't fight for myself.
Yeah, is there? I didn't realize that.
I think there was when Darren was going through the stroke. Wasn't there someone who came? The woman.
Oh, thank you for saying that. There's someone that works within the organization, within the hospital organization, that will even help the caregiver to kind of navigate the system to make sure for instance, we got this woman involved because he was ready to go to rehab, but it was stuck between our insurance company approving and the hospital. And so we were kind of in limbo waiting. And so she got involved, and then she was the conduit. And she actually advised me. She said, if you call the insurance company, they will expedite it a lot faster than if we are just calling them. And sure enough, I called them, and within 2 hours, we got the approval, because there's something about when they hear from the actual insured that they act upon it overall. But I wouldn't have known that if I wouldn't have had that, that advice that we had. There's all these little nuggets that are there that, I captured a lot of it in the book, as much for me to remember too, just because, it's when you have a spouse that has significant health problems, it's not like you're waiting for, but, it's just kind of this fact of life that you're just constantly living with. One of the questions that I had was, and I cover it in the book, is what was harder, the stroke battle or the cancer battle? And the stroke battle was way harder, because never during his cancer battle was he not able to make his own decisions and articulate and feed himself, and all of those different nuances of things that, while the cancer battle was this shadow that kind of follows you, until basically if you hit the 5-year mark, they're kind of like, woo, you made the, and so it's a lesser kind of effect. But the stroke battle is just, he went from my partner to, my dependent in terms of me making decisions. And that was me rationalizing that in my head was really hard. I had to mourn our former life, and I still am, because we're coming on the 1 year anniversary, and there's a lot of stuff that I just kind of packed away that I know that I haven't fully dealt with yet. But I will, I just kind of do. I do it slowly over time. Any other questions? I think these are really good questions. Oh, Lindy, you have your hand up.
Just going back to what you were talking about, the guns, and you mentioned several times civil liberties. You didn't want to take the civil liberties away, but in the book, I noticed how much you preserved his dignity. And I work with older adults down here in Florida, and I see spouses together, and sometimes you see where the caring spouse, the caregiver, does not preserve the dignity. So I just wanted to say that came through loud and clear with the book, and also like what you just said about your dynamics of your marriage. You went from being the partners that you were to you making some big decisions, but all while preserving the dignity is important.
It absolutely is, because my husband's still in there. That's the number one thing that I never forgot, is that my husband is still in there. The wire from here to here and here to here may not be the same, but he's still in. The person that I love is still in there. And he's always been a very kind man, but he's so sweet now. It is so amazing to me how just gentle and sweet he absolutely is. And the thing that I cherish the most, and the gift that I have, because he made me a better person, even knowing him when we became friends 24 years ago. But walking through all of these battles that I've had with him have made me a better person overall, just from an empathy standpoint and just an understanding standpoint, but more than anything, in terms of an appreciation of living for today. I am so grateful for today. And a lot of people just blow past, because they get, and I get it, because I've done it before. I've been in seasons in my life where I've been so busy and consumed with work that I forget about other things. But it's really kind of bringing it down to the present and not worrying about what's going to happen 3, 6, 9 months down the road, or in some people's cases, 3, 5, 10 years down the road. It's really, I can't control any of that. I mean, I turned 50 last Monday. And so I was really Ellery. And so I was really reflective. It's a reflective time for me this time of year. And so on the day of my birthday, I was thinking back to my birthday a year ago, my 49th birthday, and thinking of how naive I was walking into that birthday, thinking that, oh, I have this whole thing figured out. I got this life, and then, whoo, the rug is really pulled out from under you. But rarely do you have an opportunity to be who you're going to be next. And that's one of the other lessons that I learned for him also, is because we are both so like achiever, activator, get her done. One of his favorite words used to be giddy up. And so it's a very, we're from Louisiana, so it's a very Southern word, right? And giddy up. So let's go. And so throttling back and not being able to giddy up is not in either of our nature. But I was talking to one of he's more of he's a friend, but he's more in the acquaintance kind of bucket, because I don't know him as well. And he volunteered, he knows Darren and me, and he volunteered his mom, who is a retired speech therapist, to talk to me. And so in January, it was a Saturday, it was a rainy Saturday morning. And so I got on the phone with her and I gave her the statistics or all the details about Darren and where he was and everything else. And so I was like, so when are we going to get there? And she said, what are you talking about? And I was like, well, based upon your experience, like how long will it take for Darren to be recovered and to be Darren again, right? Because I was thinking naively again, because I knew nothing about stroke. I know cancer. I don't know brains. That's what I kept saying last year. I know cancer. I don't know brains. And so when I asked her, I said, well, when will we get there? She said, well, you're looking at it all wrong. And I mean, it was like a punch in between the eyes. And she said, I don't know you. And she said, but I'm going to be very candid with you. And she said, you're setting yourself up for failure by looking at things that way. And I got really quiet. And she said, can you give him the freedom to be who he's going to be next? And I thought, wow, that exactly, Keisha, I saw your reaction. It blew it wide open for me, because it took all of these, and part of it, you want to encourage and coach and give your patients something to live for, right? But the other, once they're on the other side, once they are, that they're going to survive, you don't want to set unrealistic expectations for them and add extreme pressure to them that would make their recovery, even more difficult for them. And so I got off the phone and I said, you have the freedom to be who you're going to be next. And he's looking at me like, what? And that's been the theme of, basically the last 11 months. And so I've kind of started to try to adopt it too, in terms of we don't have to follow the rules. We can be whoever we're going to be on the other side of this. It's beautiful. So I'm still learning. I'm a work in progress for sure. I have a couple. Thank you, Lindy. Thank you so much. And thank you for saying that about, oh, thank you, Cheryl. I'm so grateful for you and Ronnie too. There's so many fantastic, I mean, the network that we've had has been, with three of you are on this phone with, Margaret, Cheryl, and Ellery on this call, like propping us up. And so feeling that people are praying for you is an amazing feeling. And then knowing that people are there and literally our community held us up for months in the beginning of this year, the end of last year and the beginning of this year. And so it's like it's a love story, but then it's a true love story in and of itself.
But tell them how you start each day, what you say, because it's because of what you say and how you behave that others are there for you when you are in need. Dawn starts every day saying, how can I serve today? Mm-hmm. And it really comes through. She's always there with a piece of good advice or a valuable connection, or even just a laugh, or tell me what's going on, getting you to talk about yourself and what's interesting in your life. So because people are so grateful for you and your willingness to serve, that means that they can readily give when you are in need as well.
That's so lovely. Thank you, Ellery, for saying that. But I do. That was one of the lessons that I learned in Darren's cancer battle, is asking God for manna for the day. So I just need to know, how can I get the grace that I need to get through today? Because I was so exhausted during the cancer battle. And so I just said, I'm going to live on a day-to-day basis. And then that really evolved to, God, who can I serve today? If I extract my ego and make it about serving other people, then everything else gets taken care of. Cheryl Murphy, you had a question. Sorry, it's taken me a little while.
It's okay. I just had a question because I have the head of our security of our neighborhood. I guess he got COVID-19. Anyway, this was way back in February before we really knew anything about COVID. But my question is, he's really struggling. He still can't walk. And I know his wife, sometimes he has a GoFundMe page and sometimes she just puts things out there to vent. Like right now, the security company, just for a little background, laid him off. Well, there went his insurance while this man is in the hospital. So I feel so bad for her. They have 4 children. She's now working 2 jobs. And he is home now because they can't afford to have him in rehab. So she's trying to have to do everything. Right now, the insurance company, again, I'm just giving background, has taken away any money and for a wheelchair and said, well, we never said we would approve that. So now they took his wheelchair away. I mean, this is just heartbreaking what they are going through. And then they got a $70,000 bill on something. She finally saved enough money to have a bone scan done on his tailbone where this wound is, I guess, from laying in bed for so many months. And I know she's reaching out. What do I say to her? How do I help her? We're in an era of COVID. It's not like I can just go run over there because he's also very vulnerable. What do I do? I mean, it's it's so heartbreaking.
It's getting us creative. I'm amazed at how people get really creative. And I don't know how well. Do you know these people well, Cheryl?
Officer Webb was our security guy. I knew him pretty well, but I don't know his wife that well. I know her in passing, kind of. And they live a good ways from me. They live in Texas City. Okay. So I don't know how to reach out. I don't know what to do other than, donating the money and things like that, to help them out. And I know they're grateful for that, but I just I just don't know what to do.
Well, I'll tell you, like for a lot of folks, it's amazing to me because other caregivers don't know how to ask for what they need. And that was a lesson that I learned during Darren's cancer battle, primarily because one of my uncle's oldest friends, who's known me since I was 12 years old, saw people wanting to volunteer. And I was just like, it's okay, just pray, we're okay, that kind of thing. And she called me and she said, they are offering to help you, but they're offering also to be a part of the journey. They want to have a piece of this story, especially if it helps, you guys. So let them figure out what they can do and let them be a piece of it. And so maybe, Cheryl, it's even, contacting her and saying, you need to be specific about telling us what you need. And do you need someone to go, mow your grass? Do you need someone to set up your Christmas lights for your kids? So you have a good, I don't know if they believe, or so they have something that's nice. Do you need someone to organize like you want us to go Christmas shopping for you? I'm amazed at how creative people are. I mean, I had, in the middle of Darren's stroke, I had someone that came and delivered groceries to our house. So then that way I had a full refrigerator of groceries. Just called my uncle and tried to figure out exactly, because I have some eating restrictions and dietary restrictions. When Darren went through his cancer battle, we had like a meal train and everything else, but I had 2 girlfriends that came the Saturday before Thanksgiving and decorated our house for Christmas. And used my decoration. It was amazing. It was just amazing to me because didn't have the energy to decorate my own house. And so they said, we want to come and decorate your house. I'm like, well, I'm not just going to sit down and eat bonbons while you decorate my house. She made it just a fun. It was just, my heart is so full just because we made it a fun day. And we stayed home that Christmas season by ourselves, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. And if we wouldn't have had decorations up, it would have been pretty sad. And so we were able to really enjoy it. So I'm just amazed at the creativity that some people will come up with if you give them some parameters of, I need X, Y, and Z, or I'm struggling with, can you take my dog and get it bathed? Can you, those sorts of things, the day-to-day stuff that you don't have the time to ultimately do.
Right. And maybe that's a great idea because, I mean, she does communicate like, the kids are in school. Does anybody have any old computers or, but it's never things for herself. So that's really a great idea. What you were just kind of talking about is maybe I can also help her because she's got the weight of everything on her. And it's just so sad to me. And it's just so sad that everything's just piling up on them. And they did nothing wrong except just they don't have the money for this.
And I don't know if she needs help. I don't know if you're really good at researching stuff, but it could be or you could find someone in the network that's really good at research or has that kind of experience in terms of researching those types of, is there a program? Is there some kind of, disability or something like that you could connect her with to be able to answer some of those questions also.
Right. She did reach out in the neighborhood and nobody really, I guess with government help, kind of, where do I go? What do I do? And I don't know that anybody, I don't know if they reached out to her or not. But you've given me some ideas and because I just feel so bad for them.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing that I try to tell people when you get in that position is get very specific in terms of the ask, because people will help you. And even if it's not the right time, because when he was in the hospital and whatnot, people were like, what can I do? What can I do? I'm like, hold on, I'm keeping you on the list because when we're on the other side of it, I'm going to need help. And we had this whole transport system. People would come and pick him up and bring him to rehab actually at that point it was 6 times a week, and them shuttling him back and forth to rehab allowed me to be able to work. It also gave him some kind of social aspect too, because they would bring him and then they would ultimately like take him to lunch afterwards or breakfast or whatever. And so he got the interaction from other folks as well besides us, because he's a social being.
Right. And the other thing is that COVID has just kind of put a damper on a lot of this. So it's hard to say, oh, I can go take him because
No.
If I were to give him, well, he's already had COVID, but he doesn't have antibodies anymore. So that's very nerve-wracking.
Yeah, that's hard.
So it's just kind of tough. I think it's just the COVID has really been, made it more difficult.
Absolutely. Thank you for your question, Cheryl. What are their names? Because I'll keep them in my prayers.
Oh,
just first names, no last names.
Right. His name is Tom.
Okay.
And I'm embarrassed to say I can't think of his wife's name off the top of my head.
I'm gonna call her Mary. Tom and Mary.
Okay.
God knows. He knows who we're praying for, right?
I'm sorry.
I said God knows who we're praying for.
Right, exactly.
At the end of the day. So thank you all for joining. Are there any other questions? We're a little past time.
No, I think this is wonderful. I'm very excited to purchase the book and read it. I'm so glad that Ellery shared this with me. It's been a pleasure to meet you through Zoom.
Wonderful meeting you too, Keisha. Thank you so much. I appreciate your support.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, and Lindy, it's been great putting a face with a name. I adore your daughter. She's wonderful.
I adore her too. Thank you very much.
Me three.
Okay, okay.
And I just want to say that adorable daughter of mine is going to probably be in charge of setting up I think it's called like care pages or something in January when I have surgery. I'm going to put her in charge of that electronic format, that digital format to line it up, because I did this with a friend. She sent an email out. I'm having surgery. There were meals slots and laundry and all kinds of childcare opportunities. And instead of asking, everybody just plugged themselves in, and it was such a good feeling to be a part of that. So you heard it from me here. See how this is spinning into something very positive and very warm and fuzzy. So thank you, Dawn.
Oh, absolutely. You can put Ellery to work. That's awesome. Well, I pray that everything goes well for your surgery.
Thank you. Thank you.
I really do.
Me too.
And Ellery, maybe you'll remind me as she gets closer, so then that way I can pray and then keep updated on her too.
I'll take it. I'll take it. Thank you.
No, that's fantastic. And I have Cheryl and Cheryl. So thank you, Cheryl and Cheryl Gajeski. Thank you for joining. You guys are so great. I really appreciate you and all your support.
And Margaret too. Thank you.
And yeah, I was pausing for 1 second in case Cheryl Gajeski commented, but Margaret, as always, thank you so much. And thank you for inviting Cheryl also. So this has been fun, but please let me know how I can support any of you and any endeavors that you all have. And if I don't see you before then, happy holidays, happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all that good stuff, because it's going to be here before we know it is going to be here. So you guys continue to stay safe, okay?
It was
Thanks
nice
for
being with
continuing
all of you.
Thank you. Same to you.
continuing to inspire us.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Dawn.
Okay.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Dawn.
Have a blessed evening, everyone.
Bless you.
Thanks,
Nice meeting
Ellery.
everyone.
Thank you.